What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network for a Rogue Deck Roundup. We haven't done one of these in a while, but we will be looking at decks in the Team Up Through Vivid Voltage format that have been played in tournaments in the past month or so that I would consider to be rogue decks or off-meta decks or anything interesting that caught my eye while perusing the play.limitlesstcg.com tournament results, which is the site we'll be using to present these deck lists. Before we get into that, though, shout out to PotownStore.com, the best place for you to get PTCGO codes, and be sure to use code CELIO for 5% off. Let's start looking at some rogue decks. First, we've got a welder box here by Tommy B89. So, pretty interesting, kind of like almost like the strategy of a Torkoal box, just because of the Volcanion, the welders, the Rhyperior with energy removal. But definitely interesting to see in this day and age of standard form. Of this day and age of standard format. So the Aurora energy and also the basic fighting energy. So you can grab that with Energy Spinner for Rhyperior, since Rhyperior should be pretty important in this current meta, since Pekko and Eternatus are both really popular, and Rhyperior V can use that 210 damage attack to just knock out any of them, or can use the Drill Run to do 160 to something fighting weak while also discarding an energy. Megalopony is good against Pekko that's going to have GXs and Dedennes on the board, as well as Mewtwo decks it's going to have Dedennes and GXs on the board, since Jumping Balloon does 60 more damage for every GX and EX your opponent has on the board. Charizard Breaks In is like alright as an early acceleration, or it can do 180 and also search your deck for cards. I'm not a fan of the Charizard Breaks In. The Reshizard, of course, a really aggressive attacker. Vikavolt good against single prize decks that need to recoup their board every turn if you knock them out. So like Mad Party and Whimsicott especially, they need to drop their tools every turn. And then Melodic V to pop a Scentiscorch. And from there, I think the trainers are fairly self-explanatory. We won't spend too much time on every deck so we can get through all of them. Next, we've got another welder box. So this one is, I'm not sure who played this one. Sorry about that. Oh, it was Lewis. It was somebody by the name of Lewis who played this to a top 8 in a Hexer tournament. So this is a welder box, but much more straightforward. It's like super focused on just the Reshizard. So it's more of just a Reshizard deck, but then you also have Cramorant V and Double V. I think I like the one with options more, but this one's probably more consistent. It's really funny to see Reshizard coming back and being relevant, just showing off the power of tag teams. Like, Reshizard was good like a year and a half ago when it first came out. Like, that's when it really dominated the format, and it's funny to see it still top 8ing events just because tag teams are so overtly powerful. Next, we've got Lapras Vmax from Tucciolo, I'm gonna say, from the Sunday Open on December 6th. So Lapras Vmax, I was hesitant to include this one since Lapras Vmax is like, I guess you could consider it an archetype, but it's like not played at all. Like, there are many tournaments with 0 Lapras Vmax, so I wanted to throw this in with the rogue deck since it saw some success. Lapras Vmax does a ton of damage, so it is a very strong card, but being weak to lightning is a problem. Being weak to lightning has been a problem for a while because Pekko is just so stupidly strong. But it's cool to see Lapras Vmax being able to succeed with the Keldeo GX backup attacker, and also the other Lapras that does a little bit of damage for every water energy on it. Next, we've got Mellow Magikarp with Spirit Tomb. So, Spirit Tomb, personally, I don't think it's very strong as long as Tool Scrapper's in the meta, because your opponent can just take multiple prize cards by popping your Cape of Toughness. Also, when Zigzagoon Scoop Up Nets are in the meta, I don't think it's strong either, because they can take multiple prize cards at a turn on your Spirit Tubes. In my opinion, that kind of defeats the purpose of being a single prize deck if your opponent can still take multiple prize cards on you without implementing their own kind of spread strategies or anything. Just because of the nature of the deck, you can take multiple prize cards. But Mello did top 8 an event with this, and I have a soft spot for Spiritomb, and I would definitely consider Spiritomb Rogue at the moment. The Heracross is there to shuffle an ADP back in after they've used their GX attack. But yeah, the main attacker of the deck is Spiritomb, using Jinx, build the Spike, move the Spike. You got Spike, Moth, and Bird Keeper, and scoop up that and switch to make Spike, Moth damage your Spiritomb's Cape of Toughness to give it extra HP, Lily's Polka Doll to pivot out, Hiding Dark Energy for free retreat, yada yada. Very just smooth and consistency built deck. Just attack with Spiritomb is what you're doing 99% of the time. So while it does have like a good strategy, while it does have its strength, I think it has some really glaring weaknesses. Next, we've got more Pekko Vmax Orbeetl Vmax by Kaiser Scorch. So this one's interesting. It's not a like hit and run kind of more Pekko deck. This is based on spreading damage with the new telescopic sight and also with Orbeetl Vmax. Orbeetl Vmax can be used to knock out Colossal Vmax, which is nice, and also just to spread some extra damage with the Eerie Beam ability. More Pekko Vmax does 180 and then 20 to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon, but with the telescopic sight, it does 50 to all the bench Pokemon that are V or GX. So this is an interesting one. I think this one's really cool. Might be a little slow to start. Some games, like, you have to get that turn 2 more Pekko Vmax attack off to keep up with a lot of the format, unfortunately, but I think this is a really cool one. Next, we've got Edgar Rillaboom from Mansant. Some of these decks play Mewtwo, some of these decks play more attackers, like maybe a couple Mewtwo and Mew, and then like an Incineroar GX or something. This is a very, very basic build, and because they're not playing Mewtwo, they can utilize Power Plant to stop opposing Mewtwo's, which can be nice. They're also playing some energy removal with Crushing Hammer, and then of course Tropical Hour GX is energy removal in itself. So if you can slow your opponent down enough with Crushing Hammer to get to a Tropical Hour GX, you can just run away with the game like that. Double V is a really strong attacker, especially because it takes 30 less damage from attacks, and then with a big charm it takes 270 for your opponent to one-shot it. This is just, like I said, a super like straightforward Edgar Rillaboom deck. You can really tech these out, or you can go for consistency. Looks like Mansant here went for consistency. Next, we've got PJ with a quad Melodic V deck. I believe he went like 7-1 or something like that into top cut of this tournament, but ended up falling into the top 32 of the Sunday Open on November 15th. But yeah, quad Melodic V. Melodic is the only attacker in this deck. It's just here to take advantage of all the Centiskorch, and with Absol taking advantage of all of the big basics in the format, so buffing up their HP. And yeah, so if you hit a fire deck that's weak to water with this deck, you're very happy. If you hit a big basics deck, you're probably also fine as well, because you can bump up their retreat cost with Absol Galar Mine, and then just swing a bunch of damage with Melodic V, because it does more damage for every retreat cost your opponent has. So another really interesting deck, and also built to consistency. Something you'll notice is when rogue decks are initially successful, a lot of the times they are built very consistent without the bells and whistles, because that you have to start out. That's a good way to start out with a concept. Ryan Tan here with Raichu and Raichu Tag Team Green's Electrode. This is an interesting one. Now, this one I don't think placed very, very high, but it was something interesting that I wanted to show y'all. So it's quad Raichu, and then you're using the Electrodes with Buzz Zap Generator to power up the Raichu as early as turn 2. So you knock out the Electrode, you attach 2 energy from the deck to Raichu. Then you stamp paralyze your opponent. If they knock out Raichu, we do it all over again. We knock out an Electrode, we power up the Raichu, we stamp the opponent, we paralyze them, and at that point we're putting them into a stamp to 1 power plant paralyze. So it's pretty interesting. I gotta say, I do like the deck. And then you can always Lightning Ride GX into a Lily's Polka Doll, which is super cool. So yeah, I do like this. It's probably not going to like ever see like tier 2 and above success, but I think it's a really interesting concept that I definitely wanted to show off today. Next we've got a Quad Orbeetl Vmax. So this one, the pilot Apsy actually said they built it to be they built it off of my Colossal Vmax deck, the one with the Snorlaxes. So it's going to have kind of that same skeleton. These decks did add in Rowlet because of the 4 Bird Keeper. Rowlet is just an instant inclusion, so toss 2 Rowlets into this, but this was the original 4/4 Orbeetl Vmax Snorlax list, so I wanted to show this one from Apsy since he was the first one to do it. But yeah, definitely throw in some Rowlets here. And like I said, it's basically just imagine that Colossal Vmax deck that I put out on the first day of Vivid Voltage. You know, 4 Snorlax, Colossal Vmax, no support Pokemon. That's what you're rocking here, except with the Orbeetl Vmax. And this did make top 8 of a tournament. But like I said, definitely throw in some Rowlets into here because they pair very well with Bird Keeper and the damage spread strategy of Orbeetl Vmax. Next, we've got Flygon. Actually, last but not least, we've got Flygon GX from Gassy. Gassy is a friend of mine and a regular around the network streams, so shout out Gassy. And this was one of his many iterations of Flygon GX. Since the Vibrava cannot be bosses ordered, you can set it up kind of like Primal Groudon and just sit behind Snorlax or sit behind Doll while you set up your Vibrava, and then you go in with Flygon GX and start hitting things, hopefully for weakness. But if not for weakness, you can still get some pretty good damage because of Martial Arts Dojo. So yeah, that was the last one of today's Rogue Deck Roundup. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know any Rogue decks that I missed on this roundup. Hopefully we'll get them in the next one. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not already for daily Pokemon TCG content. Leave a like and a comment. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.